All right, let's go ahead and get started. If you could hear me, just to help me out, make sure I'm not talking to no one, just give me a yes in the chat box, please. All right, let's go ahead and get started then. Welcome to EDA 611. This is Dr. Dustin Broomball. Just a little bit about me. My day job is I'm the Director of Human Resources, Madison County Schools, Richmond, Kentucky. We'll be spending the next, 15 weeks or so together in this 611 course. So my intent for us meeting tonight is for basically go over the syllabus, a lot of the class assignments, go over the Moodle, everything. So you have everything. Basically, you're fully aware of all of the necessary expectations for this course. So I'm recording this video later this evening or first thing tomorrow morning, somewhere under this yellow box. I'm going to post this recording. So if you do run into things like, man, I don't remember what was said or something like that, you'll be able to watch it anytime during the course. So, okay, so this course, I'm going to go ahead and own up front. There's a lot to do, so to speak, in it. This is I'll consider a clinical course, very similar to EDA 605. Some similar expectations in the fact that there are 45 observation hours that must be documented. There's a pretty good culminating project and all those type of things. So, whether you're listening to me live now or you're listening to the recording later, because obviously, there's I think 16 people in this class, and it looks like the eighth person just showed up, just arrived. So there's a lot to do in this course. So I'm going to own the fact that the first week or two, there's not a ton going on, but my intent is that you are getting all your ducks in a row to be able to fully complete all the different expectations. 45 hours is quite a bit, but when you think about over a 15-week course, that's 3 a week. That's not too bad. That's not too much to expect. There are 10 different, I'll call it mandatory fun observations that you have to complete for this course. So we'll dive into those. So once again, I hope that I want to preface very strongly up front, don't think because there's not a bunch going on the first 2 weeks or so of this course. It's my purpose for that is hopefully you get your ducks in a row. So, okay, so, let's start off with, some bare basics, the simple things here of the syllabus. This is who I am. That's my cell number. I do believe, though, and I feel strongly, the best way to get a hold of me is my Georgetown email. I check that a couple of times a day. I have it on my phone. There is no book required for this course. All right. You do need access to live text. I'm going to go off of the syllabus for a second here. No different than you did for 605. Under the yellow box here are some directions that you do need to get the additional live text, basically what they call it, the field experience management component of live text. So I believe all of you have taken 605 and you had to have it for that class as well. So I'm pretty sure you guys should be familiar with having that. You do need that for this course. So once again, that's something the first couple of weeks you're expected to be something you're working on getting and making sure that everything is up and running. As I talked about, a minimum of 45 field hours are required in this course. All right, scrolling down to, all right, all of the course, I guess, experiences. For week one, basically for this week, I'm expecting you to do the forum for the first day of class. I'll point to that on Moodle when we get, as soon as we get done looking at the syllabus here. But basically becoming familiar with the course. I hope you spend a little bit of time looking at all the components of everything that's on Moodle. Specifically, I'm going to show you a list of all of the required observations that you're going to have. So I'm hoping you're taking that time on, okay, this observation, this would be a good week to do that, and I can get such and such person to help me. There's different things like that. So basically, because in week 2, I'm going to expect you to submit your plan, so to speak. I'm going to force you to plan your semester out the best you can. So for the first week, it's getting your ducks in a row. I hope that you don't fill out that form for the first day and say, I'll worry about it week 2, because I believe it'll catch up to you. So I hopefully you see that I'm really hitting this home. Week 2, if you hadn't already purchased the Field Experience Management component in LiveText, you definitely need to do that in week 2. Also in week 2, I'm going to want you to write a week 2 assignment, basically a one-page write-up describing your plan for completing the anchor assessment, the 45 observation hours, and all 10 requirements. So basically, what is all that? It's just a narrative. I don't necessarily need to know that, I Dustin, are going to complete the first observation during week 6 and this observation during week 7. I don't necessarily need to know that. I just need to know that you have a plan in place. You have formed your committee that we'll talk about here in a minute. You have talked to your head principal who's required to be on that committee. I've started to schedule some different dates and times. I've reached out to my clinical observer. Once again, I'll show you that list of people, but I need to know that you've done all those things. So, and then basically also in week 2, what I do need to specific is I need you to reach out to your clinical observer, and I'll show you that list here in just a moment. I went ahead and reached out to them and scheduled the first meeting. Your clinical observer, and I'm not sure what they called them before. I think they just called them your observer before. I think they're trying to coin the phrase the clinical educator or whatever. It used to be David Baird. He still is assigned to a few of you, but now that the program is growing, they have added people to do some of those. So some of you might have a different person assigned to you, but you do need to reach out to that person and have by week 2, so a week or so from now, have scheduled that time when that person is going to come to your school and you guys are going to sit down and have your first meeting. I just need to know that when you plan to have that meeting. Basically, I'm charging you with the task of telling me, yes, I have made confirmed with your clinical observer, and they are coming to visit with me on such and such date and time. And then week 3, back to week 2, and also spend a little bit of time looking at anchor assessment, the final project in this course, of taking a look at it and making some plans for that. That's in week 2. Week 3, you physically need to have your first meeting, and you're going to submit the minutes of that meeting. And once again, I have some documents to make sure you have everything in there. Weeks 4 through 13 is you are going to complete one at a time a different observation. I don't care what order you do those in. There's only one certain one that you have to do by a certain week, but other than that, you do them in whatever order you want. You might do observation number 10 the first time and observation number 3 the second week, so to speak. So that's basically the gist of all that. And I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but it'll become a little bit more clear once we start looking at some of these and actually looking at Moodle. Let's see, Heather, is this something you need to purchase again if you bought it in 605? I do not know that answer, Heather. It's the same thing. I don't know if you buy it, if you get it one time and you get it forever, or when you purchase it, is that a license for a semester? That I do not know. I think it should continue working. If you can go in the live text and still see it, then I would say you're probably okay. Good question that I honestly don't know the answer to. Okay, so back to the syllabus then. All right, so let's look at each one of these assignments. So during week 2, worth 5 points, as I said earlier, is a one-page write-up describing your plans to complete the anchor assessment, the 45 observation hours and reflections, and the 10 required observations. So just a one-pager, it's a narrative. You just tell me your plan. You're probably going to get the full 5 points as long as you it seems like a thorough plan. And specifically, you tell me that you're meeting, you've scheduled a time with your clinical observer to meet on such and such date and time. That's all I'm looking for. Does it seem that, does the person have a clear plan in place? Do they, and have they scheduled a time with their clinical observer? If you do both of those and it's a full page, you're going to get the full 5 points. Simple enough. The second thing is as a week 3 assignment for the committee meeting. I'll show you a different document once we actually look at Moodle, but basically for 5 points, it's going to be submitting the minutes for your first meeting. Once again, as long as you held the meeting and you did everything I asked, you're going to get the full 5 points. All right, so number 3. Now I'm going to go through all the different observations. So once again, this is the second time I've taught this course. There's been some little changes from the last time. Please do not get overwhelmed. I'm going to own the fact that what I'm about to go over with you, if you haven't looked at it already, is going to seem pretty daunting. But remember, if you do one a week or 3 hours a week, with including one of the observations, you're gonna hit that 15-week course. 45 observation hours divided by 15, that's 3 hours a week, and do one of these observations each week, and you'll be golden. You'll do fine. So once again, as you do these observations, I don't care what order you do them, there's only one of these that you'll be required to do at a certain time, and I'll share that with you in a little bit. So observation number 1, you get to pick from any of the following to participate in an interview, interviewing applicants. I don't know how relevant this will be for this time of year, but I left it in there. If you have any late hires, maybe the principal will, it could be for a classified, maybe you have a custodial position open or a paraeducator position open, or maybe there is a teacher one. But if you get to participate in any interviewing, help go through the interview, maybe develop the questions, check references and stuff like that, you can count that as one of these. If not, you need to either B or C there, attend a school board meeting, or attend a site-based meeting, site-based council meeting. Any of the 3 of those will work. Number 2, attend a budgeting meeting with your school principal as they make plans for budgeting for the school year. Be sure to describe your school's September 1 allocation. Also discuss budgeting, Section 6, Title I funds, etc. with your mentor, your principal, and identify areas that you still need additional information or PD. Identify methods of learning more about budgeting in your written reflection. So I'm basically asking you to tag along if they have a meeting. Now, each district does this a little different. If there is no meeting set up with your principal and somebody at district office, then set up a meeting where they will go through the budget with you. Specifically, I want you to have, as long as you're in the state of Kentucky, I want you to dabble in a little bit of, okay, this is the Section 6 funds budget that my school where I'm at has, and this is the budget we have for Title I. Maybe you're at a high school and you look at some booster budgets, some school funds and different stuff like that. But I want you to sit down and do a short, I don't even know if I call it a crash course, but just to see how that is. Because my goal is someday when you're a principal of your own, I've seen firsthand many principals that are brand new, their eyeballs are sticking out of their head when we start talking all these different budgets and stuff like that. And it's become clear that they did nothing when they were going to be a principal through the principal program. Are you going to leave this being an expert on Section 6 funds and Title I funds, all that stuff? No. But at least you'll start to have some familiarity with it and stuff like that. So that's the goal with the observation. All right, just getting back here, making sure everybody had any questions. So Heather, we talked about that. Elizabeth, mine was purchased last semester and says it's good until 2021. All right, thank you, Elizabeth, for helping that out a little bit. I was also wondering if we had to complete the required trainings again, if we completed them in 605. I'm not sure what required trainings you had. I don't know if maybe there's a few similarities here, but these are things that you need to do for this course. There might have been a few similarities in 605, but I don't think there'll be a ton. I may be off on that. I didn't get that feedback the last time I taught 611. This plan be bulleted or narratively rolled? Just a narrative. Um, I would prefer it be a narrative. Just tell me your plan for completing some of these, and that you've talked with your principal, you've formed your committee, some of that stuff. All right, so back to this. All right, observation number 3 is the one that I got the most positive feedback. I'll say this: the first time I taught 611, I got the most scared feedback from students, and then it was very positive feedback after they were done with it. So observation number 3 is you need to participate in a mock media interview related to a school issue and video record the interview. Submit the video recording to the interviewee to your college observer. Also, complete a reflection at the end of the interview. Complete the required district training. So if there's any training that that your district would be that requires of you to do any sort of interview with the news or something, then complete it. If there isn't, then don't worry about it. But you need to pick one of these, and basically one of these scenarios, and you just need to have somebody record you, almost like you're on the news and you're getting questioned about this. So you can pick from either of the two. Your first option for this mock meeting interview here's the scenario. Yesterday at the end of the school day, one of your students fell asleep on the bus. The bus driver parked their bus at their home after completing their bus route and did not check their bus for students like they were supposed to. The student was left on the bus alone for 30 minutes. The child woke up and went to the bus driver's residence unharmed. The parents are extremely upset and have contacted the media. Unfortunately, I have seen this situation happen. Even though it might not necessarily be you, the principal's fault, you are going to be the person who's asked a lot of the questions. So it's okay to have talked over this issue with some of your colleagues or your principal on how to answer some of these. But trust me, if something like this were to happen, you're going to get a parent phone call, and they're going to be coming in hot from the start for obvious reasons of their child being left on the bus for 30 minutes unattended. Most districts, the bus driver is required to do a complete walkthrough, meaning they walk to the complete back of the bus and check every seat, and then walk to the front of the bus before they get off. I'd find it hard to believe if they did that as they're supposed to, that would be followed, that they would have had this issue to begin with. But mistakes are made. That is one option that you can use and just basically act like you're being interviewed and have someone record it and send it to your clinical observer. The other option you have is during lunch, a large fight took place between two students. The fight takes place for 15 to 20 seconds without any adults or students intervening to attempt to break up this fight. During the fight, one student pulls out a knife out of his pocket to attempt to defend himself. Multiple observing students recorded the fight on their phones and are sharing it on social media. No students were seriously injured, and the video on the news, no students were seriously injured, and the knife was never used. It's basically, I'm trying to articulate that they pulled it out to threaten, but it was never actually swung or made contact with skin or anything. The media shared the video on the news and are asking for you to comment on this video because remember, you're the principal. The community is outraged by the lack of supervision that took place and are wondering how a student would have the opportunity to bring a knife to the school. So once again, some hard questions, an unfortunate situation. A fight takes place for 15 to 20 seconds, and you would like to think very quickly if there was good supervision going on in this cafeteria that it would be broken up quickly. But you have a lot of things at play here. You have a fight, you have a knife, you have people posted on social media, and you have some people breathing down your neck. So there's your scenario. So once again, record this. I do have on here some information on how to post things to YouTube, and then be able to share that YouTube link with your clinical person for that. All right, observation number 4. Participation in some sort of community event. It can be any sort of family night, math, literacy, fall festival. Assist in the planning, the communication to parents and public, help set up the event, and be sure to attend the event. So basically, obviously you're not gonna. My hope is you're not gonna reinvent the wheel. You're not gonna have a public event because it's required for your course. I'm hoping throughout the time of this course, 15 weeks long, that there's something going on in your school that you can, sometime this week find out when that is, and go to your principal and whoever might be helping lead that up and say, hey, listen, um, free help here. I have to do it for class. I'm sure they're going to be okay with you helping, and help plan it, help publicize it, help work it. Because obviously as a principal, you're going to be expected someday to attend these things. So hopefully you're there greeting people, you're representing your school well. A friendly smile, some nice handshakes, and do some meet and greets depending on whatever the activity is. But attend some sort of community event for observation number 4. All right, number 5 is to complete. This is basically number 5 is the one that we'll talk a little bit more in depth about, but basically your anchor assessment, your final project at the end, you're going to be required to share that and do a presentation with your group. We'll talk about that group a little bit more here in a little bit. Probably some similarities to 605. That presentation needs to use some sort of technology, probably PowerPoint or something. Your clinical observer will need to be present, so obviously that's going to be something that you need to schedule that ahead of time. Remember, and they're going to have multiple people they're working with. I believe some of these clinical observers are observing some of you and students in 605, so their calendars are going to fill up quickly. So you're going to do that observation. You're going to do that presentation, have the committee members there, do that presentation and all that. That's kind of your observation number 5. Let's make sure I've not run into any questions in the meantime. It doesn't look like it. Good. So we'll keep going. All right, number 6, participate in a professional learning community, where basically where the PLC is reviewing some sort of assessment data. I felt like there will be definitely a lot of those. I feel like there'll be many of those that should be in your school, with state testing data coming out soon, with TEL data that was released at the very end of the school year. I know a lot of your schools, whether your school does MAP testing or some other assessment. I know, as a former elementary principal, you get people that do like, Fontes and Pinnell testing, or AVMR for math testing, whatever sort of assessment it is. Attend one of those that's kind of outside your content area, or your grade level, one that you typically wouldn't be present, but kind of be a fly on the wall. You can help disaggregate the data a little bit, but I know you've done some PLCs, observed some of those in 605. Dr. Haskell told me a lot of you did those for observation hours. So maybe I'm asking you to do one of these again, but really, this doesn't even have to be in your school. In my experience, you find principals who are better at holding a PLC than others. And if you have somebody on your radar that you've heard that PLCs are done more effectively in another building, ask for permission to go to another school to observe one of those for 45 minutes, an hour, because some of those do those differently, and I'm hopeful that you can identify somebody who does a good job at holding an effective PLC, where they, the principal, aren't doing all the talking, where it's all the people involved doing some talking, doing some problem solving, offering different opinions and views. That principal does a good job helping facilitate it, hopefully. So if you're aware of somebody in your district or a neighboring district who does that very well, they're very well at it, I would hope that you could be intentional about trying to set up a time to complete this sometime throughout the course of the semester for observation number 6. Number 7 is just simply attending some sort of school district principal or administrator meeting. It's not uncommon in most or all districts, unless you're very, very small and there's not many principals or something, but they usually hold a monthly or a quarterly sometimes. In my district, we have them monthly. They call them district administrator meetings or principal meetings, and just attend one, be a fly on the wall, so that, once again, The intent is someday when you're a principal that this might not be so intimidating when you get to go to one for the first time, that you're there just to observe and to see how people interact and see what some of the things are discussed and some of those things. Observation number 8 is review your school's teledata if you're at a public school with your team. That team we'll talk about here in a little bit. Just basically identify some of the strengths and weaknesses of the data, what improvements can be made to have a positive impact on your school. So reviewing the teledata. Observation number 9 is conduct so basically is doing, obviously evaluations. In the state of Kentucky, obviously they've taken some steps back on what's required for evaluations. But more or less, observation number 9 is kind of a peer observation. Work with a colleague, a teacher in your building where you complete a peer observation and provide he or she some feedback based on Charlotte Danielson framework. I would hope that we'll talk about what you need to turn in for each of these observations, a reflection, all that, but just show what you scripted, hold that meeting. So once again, I hope you've done lots of these, but if you haven't, my goal is to one, force you to do this, push you out of your comfort zone a little bit, and provide a teacher with some feedback. So I feel like it's a win-win. And then lastly, the required observation number 10 would be spend 3 hours job shadowing your current principal. Once again, I don't expect you to take like a half a personal day or something. Hopefully you can work out that you identify a week and maybe you for lack of a better way of saying it, you suck it up that week and maybe you do 3 different planning periods where you're going to go be a fly on the wall and follow them around. Are they holding a PLC? Are they returning phone calls? Are they sitting in an ARC meeting? Are they handing out, working through discipline, supervising the cafeteria maybe in a little bit, some of those things, but 3 hours of that, and then handle the reflection that we'll talk about here in a moment for that. The last couple of things then is, just for completing the 45 observation hours that you're required to do, you do them. You're going to get 45 points for it, for a point apiece for the course. And then lastly, the anchor assessment that we'll talk about here in a little bit more detail is worth 45 points. The rubric that you'll be used when I look at your anchor assessment, and then the grading scale. Once again, the week 2 assignment is basically your plan for how you're going to do all these things with worth 5 points. The committee meeting for your first committee meeting that I expect you to hold by week 3 is worth 5 points. For each of the 10 required observations, you're going to submit a 1-page minimum reflection for each of those, and you'll get 10 points each for each of those, worth 100 points. As I talked about, the 45 observation hours is worth 45, and then the anchor assessment number 8 is also worth 45 for 200 points total. Okay, before I dive into things, let me see what kind of questions we have here. Looks like we have one. William says, do those hours need to be shadowing the same administrator, or can we shadow a couple to see? Good question, William. I have no trouble with you. I just want them to be a principal. I've said this in other courses before, and if you've heard me say this again, I apologize, but you're going to get to spend a lot of time with your head principal. If you feel like he or she's not going to be offended, I would encourage you to spend some time with other ones. If you're in a high school, maybe go try and do a couple observations in an elementary or middle school. Maybe you'll find that, I didn't think I'd like this, but I think I would. The thing I'd probably even more encourage you to do would be every district, and maybe they're already at your school, but every district, you just have that, or neighboring district has that principal that's just, from whatever reason, you just hear they are the star of all star principals. If you're going to do a couple observation hours, why not try to get a little FaceTime with him or her? I don't care if it's in your district or a neighboring one. Why not go pick the brain for 3 hours of somebody who, from the perception is they're hitting a home run. I'd bet in a couple hours you're going to leave with a few things that you add to your little toolkit, so to speak, of moving forward in your career of of things that they were able to talk to you about, getting to see a different perspective and all that. So to answer your question, William, it don't necessarily have to be your principal. It can, but it does not have to be. Okay, so I've went over the syllabus. Class assignment due dates, super quick here. It's pretty much like what was on the syllabus. The only thing is I did add the extra column for the due date. So basically for this week, the first day of class forms due today, you must do that. The week 2 assignment, basically your plan for how you're going to do everything, is due on August the 30th. So a lot of times I make things due that Monday. I think August 30th. Let me look at Moodle here. I don't think that's a Monday. Yeah, August the 30th is a Wednesday. Is a Wednesday. So a week from Wednesday is when your plan is due. Your little one-page plan, so to speak. Week 3 is when you are holding your first committee meeting. That's due September the 10th. I also think that is that's really the very end of the week 3. So hopefully that gives you plenty of time. I don't care if you even hold the committee meeting during week 2. I just need you to submit the minutes by September 10th. Basically, that's like the last day of week 3, so to speak, of the course. And then you notice 4 through 13. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, that's 10 weeks. You pick pick one at a time at your leisure. Each of those observations, make sure you have it done. And during week 3, you're going to turn in your first reflection from the observation of your choice by the Wednesday, I believe that is. Let me check Moodle here. It's probably better if I just go to Moodle and do this. I didn't put it on there. I think September the 10th it might be a Monday. Here, I got my phone here. Let's see. September 10th is a Sunday. So looks like I identified a lot of these. I'm sorry, that's for week 3, excuse me. Weeks 4 through 13, yes, by that, whatever that date is, that Wednesday of that week is when, basically I'm forcing you to keep a pace here. One at a time, submit, make sure you've done an observation, and make sure you submitted your reflection by the Wednesday of that week. So obviously, all of you will be doing these in a little bit of a different order. You're going to have some people that might start with observation number 1, and somebody else in the class might do observation number 10. But I will keep a spreadsheet, basically making sure that you complete each of the 10. Don't care what order, with a couple small exceptions. So weeks 4 through 13 are that way. So what are those small exceptions? Week 9. Week 9, you need to submit, that is called mandatory fun. You need to do observation number 3 during week 9. You might actually complete it a little before week 9, fine, but I need you to email the link during week 9 to your clinical clinical educator, and submit the reflection during week 9. So the reason for that is your clinical educators are going to be making lots of rounds early in the semester to meet all of the students like yourself. Toward the end of the semester, they're going to be making their rounds, observing these final projects for the anchor assessment, whether that be for 605 or 611, observing the presentation. So I tried to pick a week, kind of in the middle of the course. So I identified week 9 as being that one. So week 9, you need to do observation number 3. Once again, you might actually record it in week 7 or 8. But you're not required to submit the link to your clinical educator till week 9 and submit the reflection for that. And then so on and so forth. I'd like to think that also, if I were you, I'd go ahead and when you meet with your clinical educator at your first meeting, I would go ahead and firm up that date and time of when they're going to come back and complete your presentation. So, maybe next week, I don't know, next Friday, your clinical educator comes to sit down with you and you guys meet, you get your ducks in a row, you talk about whatever you talk about. And then before you leave, go ahead and, okay, hey, listen, why don't we plan on, um, you know, you coming to watch my presentation on, I don't know, November the 6th, at 2 o'clock or something. I don't know. I'm just making something up here. Go ahead and firm that date and time up. Then obviously, if it was November 6th, then, that person would for week 12, that's when they would be submitting that one-page reflection on their presentation and completing that one. So, okay, I've done a ton of talking. What I think I've covered most things. I'm sure I've missed a few things, and I'll scroll through these while we're doing it. But does anybody have any questions? If you do, please put it in the chat box, or feel free to speak through the audio in here and ask your question.
I think you already answered my question in the chat box, but I just want to make sure. So we need to get up with our clinical educator to make sure we can schedule a meeting soon for the initial committee meeting, correct?
Correct. So let me reemphasize. I will own the fact I've thrown a lot of information at you. So let's go back to the beginning. So I'll answer your question in just a moment, but let's start at the very beginning. If you haven't already, make sure you do the form for the first day of class. After that, then let's begin making some plans for the next couple weeks so that you are setting yourself up for success. So what are some of those things? Those who fail to plan to fail. I would go ahead and reach out to your clinical educator and students right under week 1 here, student assignment with clinical educators. Open that up. I don't know if you guys already know these, but David Baird shared this with me. This should be a list. You should find your name, your last name on there. Your observer is next to that. Obviously, David Baird has quite a few of these. I don't know if some of you know who Napier is or Niehoff is. Do you guys know who these people are? I do not. Yes, no?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Need email connections or something for them.
That's right. It's because if you got to class a little early, you may have saw me pull up an Excel file. It was basically what David Baird said, and I was thinking for that exact question, anticipating that question of, did these people have email addresses on that file? So what I'm going to do tomorrow morning is email David Baird and just say, hey, you've told me who these people are, but can you tell me their email addresses? And then I'm going to send those out or post those here. So why don't you try, tomorrow evening, look under week 1. You're either going to see an updated something here, or you're going to see another added link, or I'll make it stand out or something so that you can do that. But so to answer whoever asked that question was, yes. Once I provide you with that email address, reach out to that person, set up a date and time. Sometime, I would prefer sometime in the next 3 weeks at most, probably more like 2, a date and time where you guys can sit down together and get your ducks in a row. I don't really know all the little nuances of what they'll do. I'm sure that you're going to reflect and talk with them a little bit, get the opportunity to ask any questions and stuff like that. No different than probably was with 605. But then really start to make some plans. So plans on, okay, a lot of you said you already have the field experience management component for live text, so that's good. Visit with your principal. Make sure they're on board with, hey, listen, here are some of the expectations of the course here. Some of these I'm going to need you to, if you're willing, to provide me some dates and times. When is there another district administrator meeting? Do you care if I tag along? When is there any sort of budgeting meeting that you have? And if there is, can I tag along? And if there isn't, can we set up a time where maybe we take 30 minutes and you kind of go through, your Section 6 funds for the school and the Title I funds and all that stuff? Some of those things. So get them on board. and planning, looking at the calendar and all that. And while we're talking about calendars, it made me think of this. The thing that no one ever told me when I went from a classroom teacher to a principal, I kind of anticipated a lot of things changing, but I never anticipated how quickly my calendar will fill up. So if you don't keep a pretty nice and tidy calendar now, you need to. You'll be amazed at how all kinds of things that you need to follow up on, and appointments and observations, all that stuff are. So use this as you plan now as a small step toward working toward that. But the next thing also is reconvene that committee that you had in 605. If not 605, maybe you need to add. I just asked that committee, go ahead and try to schedule that final presentation when you meet with your clinical educator. That committee should have, so invite your school, I'm looking under week 2 here, invite your school administrators, specifically your head principal, other stakeholders, do you want to, maybe you want to just go ahead and invite to the final presentation your site-based council, or the department that you work with, or your grade level that you work with, or some committee members or parent managers and stuff like that. But I do expect on your committee, looking for it here. Here we go. For week 3, upload a copy of the meeting minutes for your first committee meeting. In those meetings, I need you to tell me when the date and time, like any minutes, when did it start, when did it end, the names and the roles of all the people that are on that committee, the principal, any certified staff, any classified staff. I really encourage you to try and get a parent or a community member. I would love for you to. I understand that's tough to do, but to get a committee member of, I would hope it would be, including yourself, be at least 5 or 6 people, and sit down together, and you kind of bring up to speed on the purpose of you guys coming together for your class. You're gonna and look at some state testing data, look at some TEL data, look at your school improvement plan. You don't have to look at all of those, but spend some time looking at data, because for the final project, you're going to need to identify a couple areas based on data for improvement that you can realistically change. But that doesn't need to be necessarily just you deciding that. That needs to be you facilitating looking at data in your group together, kind of identify a couple areas of focus. I'd like to think that your principal would be on board with this, because they're going to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. They're going to be supporting you through this, but they're also going to be making some improvements in their school, or your school as well. Go ahead and set up another meeting time for that during that meeting, and then obviously at the end of the minutes put that time. So the things that I would be trying to do right now would be getting at identifying a time for that meeting, getting that group together, sitting down with your principal and looking at some of the things that you can join he or she with, getting a hold of your clinical educator. Those are some of the things that I would be doing right now. So I don't remember which one of you asked that question, but does that help?
Yes, that helps somewhat.
Okay.
I think the big question that I had in 605, because that's what we're comparing this to, because
Correct.
this was the only other field experience class we had. The first meeting when he came was actually after our plan was already in place. So when the first committee meeting we had with our team at our school, he did not come. He came to the second meeting. So I'm just a little bit confused. Does he need to come to the first meeting?
Okay,
or the second?
So I'm glad you're asking that specifically, because I was not aware of that. The only thing that your clinical educator they're going to do 3 things at minimum. 1 is just meeting with you individually, not your committee. So to answer your question you asked, the person assigned to be your clinical educator does not need to be present at this meeting. They're going to meet with you individually. Might your head principal be involved in that? I was not told that they had to be, but mainly the 2 of you. The second thing is you're going to send them the link for that mock interview. And then the third thing that your clinical educator will definitely come to your building again for the second time for at minimum will be for the final presentation. So to answer your question, I don't know if that was expected in 605, but I physically, David Baird and I talked the end of last week specifically about all this, and me and him were on the same page, and we left saying that they would meet with you one-on-one very early in the course. That's why I'm asking you early in the course to set up that date and time. And then they're physically going to come to your school. And the next time they're physically going to come to your school will be sometime toward the very end of the course, not the very end, but close to it, for the final presentation. Those are the two times they will physically be present, not at your, when I say committee, I'm viewing that your clinical observer will be an observer at the presentation, but they will not be a contributing member to the committee. Does that help?
Yes, that helps. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Other people that have questions? All right, so notice on here, for week 3, I put out, if you don't forget observation number 8, you're looking at tell data. So if during your first committee meeting you go ahead and you together look at tell data, hey, you can do 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm forcing you to have your first meeting, and I'm also forcing you with observation number 8 to look at tell data. Do those at the same time, and during your committee meeting, you can also be fulfilling observation number 8. So if I'm in your shoes, either week 4 or week 5, I'm submitting observation number 8's reflection for reviewing the tell data because I took care of it early on. So just trying to point that out as an opportunity to be a little bit more efficient. So we're all clear on that you can do these in any order you want, with an exception of the mock interview. During week 9, I believe, yes, week 9's week interview. The observation number 3 it must be completed. And then I would expect probably sometime between week 11, 12, or 13 will be the presentation, which is observation number 5. Week 14, I'm not having anything due that week. I want you working on your anchor assessment number 8 and go from there. Okay, we're about done. Let's take a quick look at anchor assessment number 8 then. So if you guys took me for EDA 606 or 608, you'll notice there's some similarities to this. Title page, short introduction, just a paragraph or 2. The third section should be talking about your school and school community. And in either 606 or 608, if you took me for that class, I think I'm the only one who's taught it, so you probably did take it with me. That's one of the almost identical sections, I believe, from one of the anchor assessments in 606 and 608 is describing the school and school community, the demographics. Number 4, you're talking about the data that you're analyzed. So that's going to be the data that your committee and you are going to look at your first meeting. Notice how in here, one of the bullets I talk about, CSIP, TEL, KPREP, whatever data that you're looking at, describe that. How was it collected? Well, how was it collected is depending on which ones you looked at. If you looked at TEL data, we'll then talk about how the TEL data is collected. If you're looking at KPREP data, we'll describe how that's collected. The students took tests and grade such and such and such and such. So answer all those type things. You don't have to look at all these. I would think that KPREP and TEL are 2 of the most likely ones. But so talk about how they were collected and talk about what data that you looked at type things. The 5th section would be the key findings. So basically, what did you and your committee decide as a few things that kind of jumped off the page of some areas that you'd like to focus on? So like I described here, describe in detail the key findings of issues that you'd like to address. Describe that issue and describe why it's an issue. Let's see, building on the review now. Partners will collectively establish a priority issue and opportunity. So basically, kind of, you're about to put some actions in place later here. So tell me, if you do come up with a couple areas, which one is there one that's more of a priority versus the other one? And then talk about any barriers there might be for having difficulty in addressing that issue. The sixth section, I'll go ahead and tell you essential questions, is always one that, and I get it, guys. It's like, what do you want from essential questions? When I took on this course, it was an expectation that these be part of the anchor assessment, would be essential questions, but this would be just identify any questions of, questions you might ask yourself out loud of, you know, why is such and such issue an issue at our school? Why is it that we have continuously have difficulty in narrowing the gap in academics from from students that are more diverse? Some of those things. What are some of the hard questions that maybe you asked yourself when you guys reviewed the data? Um, it's about the best way I know how to describe it. I'll own that the section number 6, the essential questions, is always, it's difficult, but it was mandatory fun as far as I can talk about. Section 7 is the collaboration part, a very key part of this course. Talk about how you led your team through the review analysis of different data. Describe your committee, who was in your committee, the backgrounds of your committee, how often you met, when you met. When I look at this, I'm going to look at obviously what data, section 4, in great length of what data you analyzed. But a big part of this is going to be number 7. I'm going to be looking to see, how often did you guys meet? Who was it that you met with? What did you look at? Different stuff like that. So you're basically, and I give you some bullet points to discuss in that section, section 7 of collaboration, but some things to talk about. But you're focusing on the people you worked with and what you did. Section 8 will be the recommendations. What are you recommending that you do to help answer the issue that we identified when we looked at the tele data, the K-Prep data? Here is what we recommend that we do. And I would say 1 to 3. I would say 2 is probably the best answer. 2 or 3 is probably would be good of 2 or 3 things. It kind of depends what they are. But 2 or 3 recommendations of areas for improvement. And then section 9 is, once you've identified those areas of improvement, what's some steps that you're going to take to fulfill each of those? I need to do such and such and such and such. List the different things and the order of action that you plan to put in place to fulfill meeting that recommendation for improvement. And then lastly, a section on the conclusion. Write a 1-page reflection on this whole process that you went through with meeting with your committee and analyzing data and making recommendations and plans. And do you feel like it was a success? Are you going to need more time for that really to see the fruit of your labor? Things like that. Reference pages, so anything that you might reference, refer to data specifically. Make sure and give credit for where you found that. And then obviously any artifacts that you that are pertinent to all this. So once again, I've thrown a ton at you guys. We're going to meet again. We won't meet very many times in this course. This is more of a do lots of things and lots of clinical hours and lots of observations and doing some things and reflecting on it. We won't meet very many times, but we'll meet again probably more toward the middle of the course to look at, to answer any questions you have, specifically going back over anchor assessment number 8 and making sure everybody's crystal clear on what they need to do moving forward. But so after you complete all your reflections and observations after week 13, week 14 we won't meet. You won't have anything due. You probably notice that's Thanksgiving week anyway, so a lot of people will be off anyway. And then week 15, due on December 3rd, that is a Sunday, is when your anchor assessment will be due. You're going to upload the anchor assessment. You're going to upload your documentation for all your for all your hours. I'm sorry, I will be looking in live text. You don't actually need to show me anything. As long as you guys keep up with everything in live text, I'll go in there and review that, make sure that double check that each of you did fulfill all 45 hours, and then the course evaluation. So, okay, so once again, after I've covered all this, what questions can I answer? Shoot me straight. Are you guys feeling a little overwhelmed? Um, I understand if you are, but I'm hoping to try and minimize that. Okay, no one's saying anything. All right, well then, before we go, just real quick, scroll back up at the top. If you have not already, by this evening, if you would make sure and complete the form for the first day of class, what you talk about specifically, make sure you're checking your Georgetown email. I won't hit you with many emails, but try to check that at least daily. Provide me with a secondary email address. Unfortunately, I found sometimes if I shoot somebody an email, I don't hear back from them. I would like another option to reach you at. Please get in the habit of getting onto Moodle a few times a week at minimum. The administration at Georgetown, when they see that you've not logged in a week, they get very nervous. It's for an online class, and it looks like, okay, well, if you've not logged in 7 days, they're not participating. They start getting worried. Shortly after that, if you've not logged on, they will administratively drop you from the class. So I don't want that to happen to you. So please make sure that you're logging into Moodle quite regularly, checking your Georgetown email quite regularly. Send me emails when you have questions. I think most of you hopefully know by now that I'm an email away. I respond that same day, almost always, unless it's during the weekend, and even usually then I do. I'll answer your questions. I'll help you as much as I can. I hope that you spend some time planning on the front end and if you break this into smaller pieces, this won't be that overwhelming. So, all right, that's all I have, unless I'm going to stay behind if anybody has any questions or comments. Otherwise, you're free to go. Have a good evening. All right, I do see now that I didn't scroll down enough. Clinical supervisor just attend one meeting in your building. Heather, you may have heard me because obviously I'm just now scrolling down and seeing that you asked this a long time ago. It is they're going to be in your building for the first meeting, just the two of you, and for the final presentation. Judy, not sure what the topic of the anchor assessment needs to be. Coordinates with 608. Yes, I covered that. I see that's old. I think I covered that. So you're saying there is an expectation. Yes, Katie, you and your clinical observer are just meeting the two of you. We can always email you throughout the course when we reach each individual part correctly. Yeah, you can always email me. Correct. I mean, yes, correct. You can. If you have questions or you need some clarification, feel free to do it. But my thing is that when we start doing the observation is I want to have you guys on an Excel spreadsheet. And if William does observation number 6 first, I'm gonna click on the box for observation 6 to let me know that, all right, you've already done 6 for the semester. Now you have the other ones remaining where Judy might do observation number 8 first. I'll keep track of those. So you can do them in any order except for the couple I pointed out. But hopefully by then you're cranked away at the observations that are required and the extra hours that you might need, and hopefully Hopefully all that makes sense. Any last minute questions? I'm getting ready to hop off here, so if you're still on and you have a question, please do it soon. Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.